Hi, and welcome to Channel 352. I'm Peter with 352 Media Group, and I'm joined today by Evan Blake. Evan is, or was actually a programmer with us, now is a business analyst, and he's here today because he's very good at taking very technical things and putting them into ways that people like me can understand. So today we're going to talk about coding and slicing. It's something in our development process that a lot of people don't really understand. It takes place after the UI design, before the programming. So where does the coding come in? What does slicing mean? It's something that's hard to get a grasp on. So Evan, just kind of start out here. Let's go to the slicing portion first. What is slicing? Why do it?
Essentially what we're trying to do is when we're designing a site, we want to lay out all the elements that are involved in the project and put them onto the page in a way that's going to be easy for us to update and get a good idea of what the client's looking to do. Once that design has been finalized, then what we want to do is really break up the individual components and lay them out in a way that's going to make sense for the ultimate project.
Mm-hmm. Now, what's the benefit of that?
Essentially what we want to do is take a larger image and then break it down into its smaller components. So by breaking up the bigger image into smaller parts, we're reducing the overall file size, we're allowing the page to load much faster, really just putting the individual components together in a way that's going to make sense for the project.
So basically then it loads the individual components as opposed to loading one big file.
Exactly. So you're going to see little things start loading much faster. The overall image of the site is going to be put together in a much more seamless way as opposed to one big image that's not there and all of a sudden there.
Okay, and we have an example here to show, kind of helps to see a visual there, and we'll bring this up full screen now, and there's some lines here and things on it. This is a basic UI design that we created for this just to show, but what do these lines mean?
Essentially what we want to do is take the bigger picture and then cut it up into sections that are going to make sense. So any sort of navigation element, any graphic that's going to be presented on the page, whatever the individual components are, those are going to be the sections that we're going to want to cut out and make into their own little pieces.
So you don't just necessarily cut into a grid?
Not necessarily. It may depend on the design, but if there's going to be a border along the side of the page, that may be something that can be repeated. Individual photos or images that are on the site, those would want to be maintained whole. Navigation elements, if those are going to be images as opposed to text, those may be things that would be kept out separately. Each individual section really is going to need its own individual care, and that's what the process is really about.
And you mentioned repeating images. That's another one of the benefits, that those kind of images can just be loaded once, which is nice. Now, when you get to a Flash site or a site with video or Silverlight, does that get sliced up too, like this?
Not really. I mean, those formats are really sort of self-contained, so they're not really going through the same process. You may find that individual graphical elements are being built out separately and then added to the overall project, but they're not really going through the same process.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, in the past, people would talk a lot about HTML tables, and I guess that's how this was laid out. But now we use cascading style sheets or CSS. Can you explain what
Sure.
CSS?
Essentially, the original tool set. For the early beginnings of HTML really were all about how you lay out the individual components, and that was really done through tables. That would be giving you a very ordered structure, but it's very rigid in design. Mm-hmm. Cascading style sheets, on the other hand, allow us to have a little more precision into where things are going. There's still really a place for both formats in the overall space of web design, but CSS has taken over a lot of those areas and given us a little more freedom in what we can do.
Okay, and so when we say coding and slicing, that's the coding portion?
Right, the coding portion would then be taking the pieces that we've sliced up and then laying them out on the page.
But this is still typically done by a designer?
Yeah, usually the same skill set, same person is doing all of it.
Okay.
You want to be keeping in mind how you're going to be coding it, because that's going to reflect how you want to cut things up.
Okay, so CSS has some issues though with different browsers, because how different browsers read it. So how does that affect development?
Yeah, basically each of the browsers have their own little quirks and tweaks that are going on with it. So just as a color may show up a little differently, a certain aspect of CSS or HTML may be reflected differently as well. And so that's where we sort of have to get into, if we're making a concession for IE6 versus IE7 versus Firefox and so on.
Okay, so what are some of the other benefits of CSS?
Really, it's going to be a matter of giving us good control over the page, allowing us to do more consistent updates throughout the site. So if we want to change a font or something like that throughout the site, we're able to do that in one place as opposed to 50. Just different layouts and different control over what's going on.
And with CMS too, I know with the content management system, having style sheets can help as well?
Yeah, essentially what we want to do there is we can force the user into certain styles. So, you don't want your user using a CMS to put a bunch of pink text on their site and using a bunch of italics that would otherwise be out of place on the site. So what we can do is force the user, without them even knowing it, that the style that their style that they're going to be used is going to be consistent with the rest of the site.
Cool. Unless they want pink text, of course, in which case
we may not allow them to do that. So we'll see.
So I hope that helps you understand a little bit about what coding and slicing is. If you have any other questions, you can certainly ask the account manager you're working with at our company, or just email us off of our blog, and check back here for more videos on a lot of different topics, and feel free to suggest topics if there's something that you don't quite understand about web development and you'd like to. So thanks so much for watching.